Hello and welcome back to the Football Malarkey podcast. I am Simon Doyle. It is Friday, February 26th, and just going to take a look back at the Champions League games that happened this week, a couple of notable Europa League games, and a look ahead at what's happening this weekend in the football world. Two English teams in action this week, Chelsea against Atletico Madrid and Manchester City, both coming away with a win. In fact, all four Champions League games this week ended in a win for the away side. The away side are favourites in at least three of those games, so maybe not too much of a surprise there. But also with the games away tie at the moment in any football game, but particularly in Europe, doesn't mean what it used to mean, in that going away to a different country in a hostile environment and trying to get a result is obviously much harder, given that there's fans there making it hostile, etc. The away goals rule is still in place, which is a bit contentious, because what does it really count if both games are being played in empty stadiums? Some of them aren't even being played in the home stadium of either team due to travel restrictions because of COVID. So it's not so surprising to see away wins as it would be in any normal year. It's happening in all leagues across Europe as well, that there's much more away wins than there used to be on average, and the fans missing have to be a big part of as to why that is happening. But anyway, we'll start with a look at Atletico Chelsea. Atletico Madrid this season are top of La Liga. They're overall having a very good season. They're not in the best of form at the moment, but they are enjoying a lot of success this year with a new approach. Typically, that the Atletico Madrid we've seen of the last 8 or 9 years has been synonymous with a 4-4-2 defensive block, being able to score on the counter-attack, score from set pieces, but being arguably the meanest defence in Europe over that last decade. Simeone has had to transition the side a little bit in recent years. He lost a lot of those players who were essentially, they were warriors for him in that 4-4-2 system, where they would fight with everything they had defensively, and that aided them in being a strong defensive unit, being the meanest defense in the last decade. But a lot of those players got older, they moved on, and I think instead of trying to just replicate that with a new generation, Simeone seems to be trying to change Atletico's style and approach a little bit, while keeping some of those same principles that the last successful team he had, which won the league in 2014, got to the Champions League final in both 2014 and 2016, losing to Real Madrid both times. So to try and keep those Atletico Madrid principles, which are working harder than anyone else, and laying your body on the line for the badge, and he's tried to implement that with a more modern style, adding a bit more attacking flair and a bit more of a front foot approach, trying to dominate possession more. They obviously have a lot of young players they've either bought or brought through now that they're more modern in their approach as well. They're not the Diego Godins or the Gabis that he used to have, the Raul Garcias that he used to have in the old Atleti team, where they were, physically imposing and defensive minded. He's got players like João Felix, Thomas Samar, Saul and Koke are his main midfield players. He's had to change the approach a little bit as well, probably because of the players. And I would suspect it's a demand too, coming from up above his head at Atletico Madrid. I'm sure they want to see themselves become a bit more of a front foot team rather than a reactionary team. even though they were the best reactionary team for a long time, arguably in Europe. They want to change their approach. They want to, I would suspect, what all boards want to do is attain more fans, attain more people watching their games, and their profile goes up, their bank account grows, and from there, theoretically, they can buy better players, build better facilities, etc., to compete higher at the top more consistently. And that is fair. I think there's only so long that you can go being a strong, reactionary, defensive-minded team. I think eventually fans, players even do get a bit bored of the approach. It can get mentally draining. Does anybody become a professional footballer? Does anyone watch football simply for the love of watching reactionary defensive football? I would say not many. It's a valid part of the game. It's just as important as the attacking side of the game, obviously. But it's not why most people fall in love with the game. And I think eventually that style will work for a while, but eventually people want to see it grow into something else. And I think that's what Atleti are trying to do now. So this season they mostly set up in a 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 formation. They brought Luis Suarez in, obviously from Barcelona this summer, who has added much needed aggression at the top of their team up front, having lost. Well, Diego Costa I think is still there, but he's essentially not there because he barely ever plays anymore. So that experience and that aggression that Suarez brings allows the younger players like João Felix and Correa, etc., to maybe focus on their natural attributes rather than having to lead the line as well as try and develop as young players. So Suarez has given them a new dynamic up front, and they've always had solid selection at centre back, and they're making a bit more use of that now with playing 3 centre backs as opposed to 2. They've got full-backs that can play very comfortably as attacking wing-backs, although their injury issues are quite numerous at the moment, and they're having to play midfield players in the wing-back roles. And so in this game, we saw Marcus Llorente essentially play as the right wing-back and Thomas Lemar as the left wing-back, although they were a 3-5-2 in possession, they were, or 3-4-3, they were essentially a 4-4-2 without the ball, which is what they are used to, is what we're seeing Atleti used to doing. Where the left centre back Hermoso just pushed out to left back, Llorente, the right wing back, came back to right back, while Thomas Lemar tucked in as the left midfielder, and Correa as the right forward came back to right midfield. So the two on the right hand side would basically shift up a position in attack, shift down a position in defence, while Thomas Lemar kind of just tucked in as they defended to create the 2 lines of 4, and then Felix and Suarez up top. But in possession, like I said, Llorente would push up, Correa would push up, and Felix would go a bit more left. Lemar was supposed to be the furthest left, but he tucked inside a lot, as he likes to do. He's a more creative dribbler type of winger than someone who likes to play out on the touchline. So they didn't have a whole lot of width on the left hand side. But I think they were in their defensive positioning quite a lot. So they were having to deal with Chelsea essentially focusing their attacks down the right hand side. And Chelsea had 59% of the ball. So that's, I think, why Atleti didn't see a whole lot. We didn't see a whole lot of width and a whole lot of space on the left hand side for Atleti to expose. Chelsea were playing in the 3-4-3 that they always set up with now under Tuchel. Christensen, Azpilicueta and Antonio Rudiger were the 3 centre-backs. Marcus Alonso came in at left wing-back, with Callum Hudson-Odoi again playing as a right wing-back. but they're in attack. They're quite lopsided in that they do focus their attacks down the right hand side to try and get Hudson-Odoi in 1v1 situations down that right hand side. So his average position is a lot higher than Alonso's is, for example, on the left. And what you'll see is Chelsea typically, when they're playing out, they'll have the 3 centre backs, they have the 2 holding midfielders, Jorginho and Kovacic, and they will focus the play down the left hand side first to try and attract the defending team over to that side before circulating quick or switching the ball quick over to the right hand side to try and get Hudson-Odoi in a 1v1 situation. And they rely on him to be in those situations a lot and to win those 1v1 duels to then create opportunities, crossing opportunities perhaps, or if he can cut in and get a shot off or a pass from an inside channel position, then that can work as well. They had Giroud up front, obviously to try to take advantage of any crossing situation. Atletico Madrid are notoriously good at defending crosses, so you need someone who's one of the best number 9s to challenge for aerial balls, and they have that man in Olivier Giroud, so that's why he started there. And then in just behind him, he had Timo Werner and Mason Mount playing the more attacking midfield, inside forward kind of roles. I talked a couple of weeks ago about how the formation somewhat represents the old WM system, in that you basically have the WM essentially can be described as a 3-2-2-3. Now in this game, Alonso wasn't that high. He wasn't all the way up on the left wing position like Hudson-Odoi was on the right. So if you look at the average positions, it looks quite lopsided. But essentially the thinking is to have the width from the wing backs, the 5 players at the base with the 3 centre backs and the 2 midfield players, the 1 striker up top, and then 2 players in behind him, essentially playing as attacking midfielders or inside forwards, depending on the approach. And like I said, they had 59% of possession. I did think it was a fairly even first half, but I think Chelsea were edging things in general. They were definitely creating the more shooting opportunities. I think they had 11 to only 5 or 6 for Atleti, as well as having 5 shots on target. Atletico Madrid didn't get a single shot on target, which is a big disappointment for them, particularly in what was supposed to be a home game. It wasn't played in Madrid. I think it was in Bucharest or Budapest, one or the other. But yeah, I think what I saw we saw what we expected to see from Chelsea under Tuchel. They play in that formation I just described. They try and keep possession. They try and isolate Hudson-Odoi in 1v1 situations, and they try and expose the half spaces and the inside channels with those 2 inside forwards / attacking midfielders, Mount and Werner being those 2 players in this situation. Werner created 1 opportunity for himself, and he had a decent shot with his left foot, which Oblak saved. He was expected to save it, but it was a good attempt from Werner. But the breakthrough came in the second half, where Olivier Giroud scored a fantastic overhead kick into the bottom corner. It was contentious because it seemed to everyone to be offside. The referee called offside initially, before VAR reviewed and said that it wasn't. Now, there's a cross that comes in from the left-hand side. I think it's Marcos Alonso plays it. Mason Mount and I think it's Hermoso at left centre-back for Atletico Madrid both got a challenge for the ball. It ends up going behind Hermoso into Giroud's path, who is in an offside position. Giroud gets up and does his thing, scores a fantastic goal. But the review seems to say that Hermoso is the one who hits it back towards his own goal in the 50-50 with Mason Mount, and hence why Giroud is not offside. Now, from the initial look, it looks like Mount is the one who gets his foot to it first and puts it over. That's what the linesman and referee thought. That's why they gave it offside. Looking at the VAR, I didn't see any definitive angle which shows that Hermoso got it first. I might have missed it. I did have a look at it again. I didn't see a conclusive angle. I'm not sure where VAR like if VAR was, they must have been certain. They must have seen an angle that they were certain that shows Hermoso got to the ball first. Otherwise, they shouldn't be overruling the on-field decision. But I didn't see it myself, so I'm assuming I'm wrong. I'm assuming it was perfectly valid and that the defender did hit it first, therefore Giroud is onside. All I'm saying is I didn't see it from any of the angles that I saw, and therefore to me it looked a bit strange as to why it was overturned, but I have to assume that they saw a conclusive angle that suggests the defender did get the ball first and therefore Giroud is not offside. So yeah, it was a great finish from Giroud. Take nothing away from his finish. It was superb. Chelsea deservedly get their 1-0 win. The away goal, which still counts for some reason. And the second leg will be in 3 weeks, I believe. Now, I'm not sure, I haven't looked into it, if the second leg is going to be in England. I know that United played last night on Thursday and Sociedad were allowed to come in and play at Old Trafford, so I think it's just the other way around where the other countries don't want teams coming in from England, but I think England are happy to have those teams come in, so therefore I expect that the second leg will be at Stamford Bridge, and same for Manchester City and for Liverpool as well, because they all played their first legs away from home. So I'm assuming they'll all be playing at home in their second leg, which will be in a few weeks' time. So yeah, very good win for Chelsea. They now play Manchester United this weekend, which is a big game in the Premier League. But they're going well. I think I'm very impressed with how solid they are defensively. They seem to be getting clean sheets on the regular. They're restricting their opponents to very little chances, restricting this current Atletico Madrid team. I understand that they're not in the best form in the last few weeks. I watched their game where they lost 2-0 to Levante last week, and I thought they were very disappointing in attack despite having most of the ball. But overall, they are a superb team. They're having a fantastic season. They've set a fantastic points tally so far in La Liga. And with players like Suarez and Felix and Correa and Lamar in attack, to restrict them to no shots on target is very impressive from Chelsea. So to be that solid defensively and dominate the ball, they're doing a lot right. Now whether it's going to be sustainable and whether it'll lead to consistent wins, I think that's still been a question mark over what's been seen so far. But I don't think you can really argue with what Tuchel's done so far, and I'm sure Chelsea fans are very much enjoying watching their team at the moment. So for Atleti on the other side, for me in this game, it looked like maybe this was an attempt at arresting their bad form, but they seem to be caught in between the old Atleti and the new Atleti. They didn't seem to want to compete with Chelsea in terms of keeping possession. They seemed to be happy for Chelsea to do that. They would have known what Chelsea were going to do going into the game. We've seen it from every game under Chelsea. From Chelsea under Tuchel so far. So this would have been no surprise. Therefore, they tailored their approach to maybe be a bit more like the old Atleti and be a bit more defensive-minded first and reactionary and try and play in the counter-attack. It didn't come off. And to me, they looked like they were caught in two minds. Maybe they're not quite ready, even though they're doing well in La Liga. Maybe they're not quite ready to go and dominate teams in Europe who also like to play a possession-based game. Maybe they're not ready for that yet. I think even though they are top of La Liga, they've been doing well against the lesser teams mostly, Levante aside, and they did lose to Real Madrid in the derby earlier this year. I cannot remember what score their game against Barcelona ended. But maybe it seems as though even though they've come a long way and they have this new approach, maybe they're not quite ready to, like I said, go toe-to-toe in terms of trying to keep possession with the teams that do it best in Europe yet. So they seem to be caught in between the old Atleti and the new Atleti. I think they're going to have to. It's only a 1-goal lead for Chelsea, so there's still everything to play for in the second leg. Atleti's goals will count for double, obviously, with them being the away team in the second leg. So I think they just have to choose an approach and stick with it hard. If I was Simeone, I would be trying to stick with the new approach. I think it confuses players and maybe can set them back a little bit if you're saying, okay, that new approach is great, but we're going to go back to what we used to do for this game. I think that creates a lot of imbalances. And yes, they had an injury stricken squad. I'm not playing that down. They do have a lot of big players missing, but for me, I would encourage them to be the Atleti that they have been for most of this season. Try go toe-to-toe with Chelsea in terms of keeping possession and see if they can create the chances and get the goals from there. I think that's their best chance in the second leg. So, all to play for in that game. Elsewhere, Borussia Monchengladbach 0, Manchester City 2. A very dominating and impressive win from Manchester City. This is another game I was able to watch all the way through, and from the opening exchanges, I wasn't surprised in what I saw. Manchester City were dominating the ball. Again, everyone knows what to expect from City under Pep. I thought Borussia Mönchengladbach were doing quite well in setting up they were trying to set up a wide pressing trap, and the players were covering well behind to stop any more direct approaches from Manchester City at getting in behind. And I thought they looked reasonably comfortable in their defensive shape, Mönchengladbach, until that first goal. They gave Cancelo a little bit too much time in midfield. He's coming in from left back onto his right foot, and he curls a ball perfectly up over the defender. I think it was Elvedi's head, and it falls perfectly into the path of an on-running Bernardo Silva, who tucks away an excellent, a neat header to make a 1-0 to City. And frankly, if you're letting a ball get played from the midfield right over your back line and Bernardo Silva is running onto it and heading it in, you've got some defensive issues there, because Mönchengladbach's centre backs are all 6'2" at least. Any ball just floated in from midfield. As good a ball as it was, is timed perfectly. It drops just at the right moment. It's bending as well. But for Bernardo Silva to easily just make a run in between the centre back and the goalkeeper and get his head on it first, it's not the best from Mönchengladbach. It looked like they were defending quite zonally in and around their box. It happened with the second goal as well, where players they seem to be ball watching and just kind of occupying their zone rather than watching where the players are, where the threats are. And for me, I'm never a fan of zonal marking in open play in and around your own box. You have to have a certain amount of organisation, absolutely, but just letting players run free in and around your box, especially when there's no pressure on the ball, I think you're going to get torn apart by teams of the quality of Manchester City, and that's exactly what happened. City did set up in their regular 4-3-3. As I said, Cancelo was playing left back and came into midfield on his right, which we often see him do. He does that role extremely well. Walker played at right back. Diaz and Laporte were the other centre backs, but when Cancelo went in, when they had possession to join Rodri, to essentially create the two ahead of the three, just like Chelsea do. So Chelsea have the three centre backs, they have the two holding midfielders in front, and it creates a 3-2, which allows for, it has a bit of width obviously with the right back and the left centre back in this instance, Aymeric Laporte, and then it creates those two defensive midfield players to progress the ball through the first line of pressure. And with Laporte being left-footed, he was the perfect person to come into this team. I think that's why Stones didn't play. He needed a left footer on that side if Cancelo was going to push in, because you need that player to be able to receive and play on the left side to help the ball progression, and then Walker was on the right. Diaz held everything down centrally, and that also allowed Gundogan to push up a bit as the more advanced midfielder. Bernardo Silva essentially played as a second striker in behind Jesus, but obviously makes a lot of movements back into the midfield area. He is a midfield player, Bernardo Silva, and that created City do this all the time, and they create a lot of positional issues for the opposition. Foden and Sterling also came quite narrow, leaving essentially Walker and Laporte to provide most of the width. Foden and Sterling would obviously start out wide at times and try and pin their fullback, but a lot of the time their average positions are quite central, as well as Jesus and Silva's and Gundogan's. So it was really Laporte and Walker who would be the widest, and City just dominated possession from there. Monchengladbach, I thought the defensive structure was solid enough. I think they did their homework pretty well in Manchester City. Marco Rosa, I think, had a decent idea. I don't think they had the players to pull it off. Marcus Thuram didn't start, which was a disappointment from my point of view, because if you're going to play the way they did, you need that pace in transition. They had Alessandro Playa on, but him alone is, especially since he's coming off the left hand side, and that's where Kyle Walker is. Kyle Walker is absolutely rapid as well, so he was more than able to handle Playa's runs in transition. Lars Stindl played as the striker for Monchengladbach. He's their captain. He led the line well and pressed well, but I was disappointed in him when he got on possession. I thought he was often very slow in possession in picking out a forward pass. I thought he played a lot of safe passes. Marco Rosa said before the game that his team had to be brave and not be afraid to go toe-to-toe with City in terms of possession, which is okay, but then there was often times when the opportunity to play in transition and play on the counter-attack was on, and they decided to keep the ball. Now, I understand you can't just play forward every time. You're going to lose the ball again and again, and City are going to have a lot of possession. But then when they were in possession, Monchengladbach, they didn't seem to have any clear idea on how they were going to attack this Manchester City team. And they would get to a certain point in midfield where they would have forward options blocked off by City essentially, and they would just go back, and then they would try and force play forward again, and it just didn't work. City were able to hoover up the ball again easily and then start their attack again. So after seeing that for a little while, if it was me in Marco Rosa's position, I think I would have tried to alter the approach and try and pick apart those gaps that City did leave open but just weren't being exposed. Now maybe City were happy to leave those gaps exposed, because Gladbach didn't have a lot of pace in their team. It was only really Playa with any ability to get in behind, and like I said, he was being tracked by Kyle Walker. And on top of that, they probably would have seen within the first 10 minutes what Gladbach were trying to do, and they saw Gladbach trying to keep possession more. So City were very comfortable to leave those gaps open, and that gave them even more dominance in being able to counter press, win the ball back, and cycle the ball around again after the transition. So yeah, it was like after about the first 20 minutes, it was very much a mismatch. I think Thuram did come on in the second half, but he was a direct substitute for Alessandro Playa, so it was just a like-for-like substitution. They're different style of players, but in terms of the role, it was a like-for-like substitution, which I didn't fully understand. I don't know if Playa had an injury or anything like that, or wasn't fully fit to play. I'm assuming Marcus Thuram wasn't fully fit to start. I don't know, but just left a little bit disappointed by Gladbach's approach. I think it left a lot to be desired. But yeah, comfortable win for City. I think most people would have predicted that anyway. It would have been nice to see them play this Gladbach team that we saw maybe around November time, October, November, they were doing very well in their group. Obviously, Gladbach, they got out of their group, which had Real Madrid and them both progressed, but they also had Shakhtar and Inter Milan, and which is a very tough group, and they came in second in that group. And I feel like that team that we saw back then was better than the one that we're seeing now, which have slipped down the table in the Bundesliga. Not in the best of form. Their manager it's just been announced that their manager is leaving at the end of the season. He's going to join Borussia Dortmund. So I'm sure that can't help the cohesion inside the squad. Is that why some players played and some didn't? I don't know. I'm not fully up to date on the fitness levels of the Monchengladbach squad, but yeah, overall left disappointed by Gladbach's approach, but 2-0 City and very much favourites to go through. Elsewhere, Atalanta hosted Real Madrid. It finished 1-0 to Real Madrid with a late goal from Ferland Mendy, the left back. Ferland Mendy was a key player in this game because early in the game he was sent through on goal. He was fouled, and Freuler from Atalanta was sent off. So Atalanta had to play most of the game with 10 men, which is it's tough enough to play Real Madrid with 11 men. With 10 men, their job was made that much harder from the early stages. For me, I know there was a lot of contention about it. For me, it wasn't really debatable. The referee didn't really have a choice. It was one of them where the referee didn't really have a choice. It was a foul. He doesn't get the ball. He does trip the player. The player is simply going for the ball. He doesn't create the contact himself. He's going for the ball. The player comes across. Legs collide. It is a foul. And he would have been through on the goalkeeper. Yes, it's at a bit of an angle. He's off to the left a bit, but he's very much through on the goalkeeper there. Some people were saying the covering player was coming around. There's no way, if you look at it in real time, that covering centre back is catching Mendy in that situation. He's very much one-on-one with the goalkeeper. If it wasn't for that foul, and therefore it had to be a red card. So Atalanta down to 10 men. And from there, Mendy again popped up in the 85th minute, or the 86th minute, I should say, to win it. So it was, even though they were against 10 men, they couldn't break down Atalanta really. They didn't create a whole lot of good chances. Real Madrid, they were struggling. Atalanta were defending quite well. And it came to Mendy. I think it was off a set piece, if I remember correctly. It came out to Mendy. He was about 25 yards out approximately. Puts it on his right foot and bends it beautifully into the far bottom corner. He's very much a left-footed left back, Ferland Mendy. But he dispatched that shot brilliantly, very comfortably. He looked like a normal right-footed player putting that into the bottom corner. I did hear something on the On the Continent podcast this week that apparently he had an injury when he was a teenager to his left ankle, and it was very sore for him to play any long passes or shots from on his left hand side. So he basically practiced a lot and became very comfortable with his right foot. So I think that's where that comes from. He's very I didn't know that about him before. He's very comfortable with both feet. Ferland Mendy is naturally left footed, but extremely comfortable on his right, and you can see that with that finish. He looked like a world class midfielder, right footed midfielder, curling that into the far bottom corner, and that was enough to win it for Real Madrid. There's still very much to play for though in the second half in this game, or in the second half of this tie. Atalanta will go away now to Madrid for the second leg, and again the away goals rules will be any away goals scored in that game will be in their favour, and there's no reason why they can't go there and get a few goals, as long as they keep it 11v11 this time. I think there's no reason why Atalanta can't cause Real Madrid a lot of issues with the second leg. Real Madrid have that knack, and this is how they've obviously won so much in the last decade, and they've so many experienced players. They have that knack of just winning, just getting over the line. They don't really care how they do it. That that will stand in their stead, and I'm sure they'll be heavy favourites to go through now. But I think there's still a lot to watch and there's still a lot to play for in that second leg. I think it's going to be very intriguing. Probably much more so than the Gladbach City game, which I think those two were on the same night, and then Atletico and Chelsea, and then Bayern Lazio was the other night, I think, if memory serves me right. So narrow win for Real Madrid. Also, Real Madrid, they went into this game with a lot of injury issues. Their bench was completely full of youngsters, who most of whom I'd never heard of before. They had Courtois on goal, Varane and Nacho were the centre halves. Mendy was a left back. The right back has slipped my mind. Was it Carvajal? I can't remember. But they had the old midfield trio of Casemiro, Modric and Kroos in midfield, as well as Isco kind of playing as it was maybe more of a diamond for this game. Isco maybe playing as an attacking midfielder or a false nine, with Asensio and Vinicius kind of up front / wingers, but they were the forwards in the team. Now when I look at Real Madrid these days, I just scratch my head as to why it's taken them so long to evolve the midfield. The midfield selection, their best three is still the three that were the best three 6 years ago. Now that's not a problem if those three are still on top of their game, but for me, Modric hasn't been on top of his game for quite a while. He's still a fantastic player, yes. Is he one of the best in the world as he was 2 years ago? Not for me, not anymore. Is Casemiro still one of the best at what he does? Again, I think that's debatable. For me, he doesn't dominate from that holding midfield position like he used to. He was one of the best ball-winning midfielders, and then would redistribute and could burst forward. He could play box-to-box role if he needed to. He was one of the best in the world at that 2 or 3 years ago. But for me, I don't think he still plays at that level consistently. I'm still a big admirer of Toni Kroos. I still think if you put the right midfielders around him, he will still be very, very effective and is still world class on his day. Nobody at Real Madrid looks consistent, to be fair, at the moment. I know Valverde has come into the squad and he often does play when he's fit, but there needs to be 1 or 2 midfield signings in the near future for Real Madrid if they can. There's a lot of talk that they want Paul Pogba. Is Paul Pogba going to solve a lot of their issues? I'm not so sure. Would he be better than Modric is now if he's fully fit? Yeah, I would say so. And he'll obviously be there for the next 5-6 years if he went, whereas Modric is 33 now, I think, or 34. But I think they need to desperately evolve that midfield. For me, with the lack of legs, you would say, between Kroos and Modric anyway, at the moment, they don't look to dominate possession as much as they should, in my opinion. They seem happy to be... It's always been a strength of theirs over the last few years that they have these world-class players and they're all flexible. So they will adjust to play around the opposition pretty much, and they don't care how they win, just that they win. And that's been a strength of theirs, and I think it's why they were able to win the 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Obviously, having Ronaldo there is a huge added plus as well. But for me, they don't have that luxury anymore because, like I was saying, some of these players are falling off that top form, or some players have moved on, like Ronaldo. It looks like Sergio Ramos is going to move on this summer. Marcelo doesn't start at left back anymore. It's Mendy now. You have Hazard, who's been brought in but hasn't done a whole lot. I think I'm just a bit surprised if they have to play that midfield that they don't utilize their current strengths a bit more, which would be keeping possession and not doing as much of the running, just playing off their positioning and their passing accuracy and their ability to not only hold possession but break lines and get forward and get those younger players, those wingers, Asensio and Rodrigo and Vinicius on the front foot and in 1v1 situations and in behind defensive lines. For me, that would be playing to the strengths of the players that they have now. But that's not often what I see from Real Madrid. They're still quite reactionary at times, and I'm just not sure it suits their current squad the way it currently is assembled. So I can't see them winning it. I know I might look very stupid saying that, because there's always a feeling that Real Madrid always have a chance of winning it. I would just think it would take a major collapse of 2 or 3 other teams who are much stronger, in my opinion. If this Real Madrid team came up against Manchester City, Bayern Munich, or Paris Saint-Germain at the moment, I cannot see how they get past them over 2 legs. So we'll see. Maybe they'll get the luck of the draw and get some more comparative ties up until the final, and then the final is just a one-off game. It's anyone's bet, really. But for me, I'd be very surprised if Real Madrid win the Champions League again this year. I don't think it's their year for that. As well as that, now I haven't been able to see a whole lot of Real Madrid games of late. But for me, surely this season, you're looking to see the progression of the very notable young talents that Real Madrid have brought in, that they've marketed, that they've said to the world, look at these guys are going to be the next big thing. I'm talking about Vinicius, I'm talking about Rodrigo, I'm talking about Asensio, all wingers / forward players, very, very talented, among the top talents of their generation, all still very young. I believe Rodrigo's still a teenager. I think Vinicius couldn't be more than 20, 21. Asensio couldn't be more than 23, maybe. I'm not seeing any of these players blossom into the player that they were touted to be. Now, I know I just mentioned their ages. They're still very young. There's still plenty of time for these players to develop. But they've all been there a couple of years now, at least. Asensio longer. And I'm not sure I'm seeing much of a progression from when they first came into the team. They're certainly not very consistent contributors in terms of goals and assists. This Real Madrid team is still very reliant on Karim Benzema, as well as the attacking output of some of their midfield players that I mentioned previously and fullbacks. And I do wonder if this is a consequence of having Zidane around still. Now, I thought when they brought Zidane in, easy to say in hindsight because of what he won, he was the perfect manager for that team, because it was a group of superstars who had grown a bit disillusioned with some previous managers. They weren't able to compete well in terms of this overall style of play, this philosophy war that they were essentially having with Barcelona first and foremost, but then their top rivals in Europe as well. While Pep Guardiola was doing things with Bayern Munich, Barcelona were being the Barcelona that Pep started. Atletico Madrid had their clear identity. PSG were starting to gain an identity. Real Madrid seemed kind of lost, and didn't really know what they were. But Zidane came in and saw that he had one of the best assembled teams on paper in the world, and knew exactly, having been one of those type of players himself, knew exactly how to manage them. His man management, I'm sure, is superb, and essentially managed their egos, managed the team, got them all on the same page, got them to be flexible, like I was talking about before, and be able to react to the different opponents they were playing. And that attitude, that commitment, on top of the talent that they had, and that flexibility, I think, was perfect, particularly in cup competitions, and that's why they did so well in Europe. But with a rebuild, you're either going to put a lot of pressure on these young players to be like the Ronaldos and the Benzemas, etc., or you have to come up with a more defined style of play. Find roles for these young players so they know exactly what's expected of them, and watch them grow from there. And if they don't grow from there, I mean, if they're all not growing from there, it seems like a systematic problem. If it's just one or two, then you say, okay, sorry mate, but maybe not working out for you here, maybe they move them on. So I'm not sure what's going on at Real Madrid in that regard. Now, like I said, I'm not watching a whole lot of Real Madrid games at the moment. When I watch the Liga games, they're not the first team I look out for, because I don't find this current Real Madrid team entertaining. Like I said, there's no particular style of play to look out for, and there's not even fantastic individuals on show at the moment, really. Hazard's always injured. Benzema, in fairness, is holding his own. He was injured for this game, but there just isn't the attacking flair and the spectacle that there was from the Real Madrid teams of just a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I think, in my opinion, I'm not convinced that Zidane is the man you want there for a rebuild. Is he the man that you want there when you've got a bunch of superstars? You need to get them all on the same page and manage their egos? Absolutely. I'm not sure bringing him back in to do this rebuild job was the right decision. And I might be being a little harsh. He hasn't been able to buy a player in the last 3 transfer windows. That's this January, the summer, and last January. So this summer it'll be 2 years since they bought a player, which for Real Madrid is shocking. They're putting a lot of money into their new stadium rebuild at the moment, so that's probably why mostly. But at the same time, there has to be something a bit more evident. If you can't buy players, then surely we should see much more progression from the young players in the team, or players coming through from the academy. Again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, comment below. I'm not seeing it myself. But like I said, I'm not an ardent Real Madrid fan. I'm not following them every week. I'm not watching them game to game. But I've seen most of their Champions League games this year, and I'm seeing older players trying to get through the game and try to win by any means necessary, and the younger players, doing their bit and putting the effort, but not really growing a whole lot, not really progressing. It doesn't seem to be, to me. They got outrun in a couple of games against Shakhtar Donetsk in the group stage. I mean, it looked like they might not even make the knockout stage, and they ended up finishing first. A very typical Real Madrid thing to do. But that definitely was ringing alarm bells at the time, and they were being easily outrun. And I still think that Atalanta could do that to them in the second leg. So, yeah, it's... I'm not convinced they'll go through, even though they will be favourites now. And even if they do, I think that's as far as they'll get, is the quarterfinals, Real Madrid, for me. But we'll see. So yeah, 1-0 Real Madrid. And the last game that was on this week, Champions League game, was Lazio 1, Bayern Munich 4. Didn't get to see this game myself, just the highlights really. Lazio setting up in their typical 3-5-2. Bayern in their typical 4-2-3-1, with a young 18-year-old Musiala playing at number 10. Apparently he's an English kid, but he plays for Germany. I think he's got German parents. But anyway, he got a bit of a surprise start, but was excellent and scored a fantastic goal. Bayern dominated the game. Lazio were a bit run ragged. They've got a solid defensive unit, Lazio, but they were caught out in transition a lot by Bayern's extremely fast forwards. Like I said, Musiala playing at number 10, Sané out wide, Coleman on the other side, Lewandowski up front. They just ripped them apart in transition. Their first goal came from a very bad back pass toward the goalkeeper. Lewandowski cut it out. And when you get him in those areas, it's a guaranteed goal. He's arguably still the deadliest number 9 in world football. Musiala got the second goal, and I believe Leroy Sané, got the third after good work from Kingsley Coman on the left hand side. They tried to get Coman and Sané up against the defenders 1v1, and anytime they did, they ripped them apart. Sané did it again for the fourth goal, getting right across the front of goal, which ended up being an own goal, but if he didn't, it would have been a tap in for, I think it was Alphonso Davies behind him. So yeah, you talk about that front four, and then you got Davies bombing on from left back as well. It's just incredible pace that Bayern have. So an easy win, 4-1 win, the most convincing win of the round, I think. And Bayern, I don't think there's any debate. Bayern will be through to the quarterfinals, no doubt. They could probably play an entire second string side and still go through in that next game. They'll be very comfortable. But interesting to see who they get in the next round. Because for me, there's a few ties that are shaping up. If we could see them, would be incredible to watch over two legs. Manchester City, PSG, Bayern Munich, any of those two playing each other would be fantastic to watch over two legs. Even one of them against Liverpool, perhaps, because even though Liverpool are having a bad go of it domestically, they were very good against Leipzig last week in Europe, and I'm sure they will be focusing on trying to win the Champions League again, because the Premier League title will be out of reach for them this year. So they still have it in them, absolutely, to compete with the best in Europe. So that would be another team that I wouldn't mind seeing. Any two of those four really, I think, would make for a superb Champions League quarterfinal or semi-final. I'm sure, unless they knock each other out in the quarterfinals, I'm sure at least three of those four teams will probably be in the semi-finals. Like I said, unless they meet before that. And maybe that would be best. Maybe it would be best to see if you had those four as the semi-finalists. Or personally, as a Manchester United fan, I don't want to see City or Liverpool anywhere near the Champions League final. But in terms of quality of football, that would probably be the best four to have in the semi-final stages this year. So we'll see. There's still a couple other teams obviously in there who reckon they should be in that conversation. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if Bayern Munich don't make the semi-finals this year. At least they look extremely strong. But forget about the Champions League, because all that really matters is the Europa League. We all know this. And this week, all the English teams went through except for Leicester City, who got knocked out by Slavia Prague. Quite surprising. I would not expect Leicester to fall into that hurdle. Not much has been made of it. I mean, I can only imagine the journalistic outcry if Manchester United or Spurs or Arsenal had been beaten by Slavia Prague. Leicester, tied second in the league, get beaten, and it's just tough luck. Now they can focus on the league. I guess that just shows the difference in size of the club, and that's not trying to be disparaging to Leicester, but obviously they just don't have the attention, the limelight on them that certainly Manchester United do, and even that Tottenham and Arsenal do. But yeah, I didn't get to see the game, but a 2-0 loss to a team that they would have been fully expecting to beat is a big surprise and a big disappointment for Leicester, I'd say. I think they would have thought, and I was certainly thinking, that they were one of the teams that could well have won the Europa League this year, and that would have been a huge achievement for Leicester City to win a European competition. Yes, it's not the Champions League, and the Champions League is where they want to be, but I mean, have they won any European competition in their history? I don't think so. I could be wrong. I don't think so though. So I think that just particularly going out to a team that they would expect it to be, if they get knocked out by a good team, fair enough. But I can't imagine losing to Slavia Prague was ever in their plans. So disappointing for Leicester. They're out. Spurs are through. They walked over Wolfsburger of Austria, not Wolfsburg of Germany. Different Wolfsburg. They're through to the next round. I think they're playing Dinamo Kiev or Dinamo Zagreb, one or the other. They should be. There'll be heavy favourites to win that game as well. Should get themselves through to the quarterfinals. Jose Mourinho does love the Europa League, so I would fully expect them to progress again. Arsenal had a very entertaining 3-2 win over Benfica to go through 4-3 on aggregate. The first leg finished 1-1. This game was played in Greece. Like I said, they couldn't I guess Portugal weren't happy sending Benfica to England, so they played it in Greece instead, at Olympiacos' home stadium, which is quite ironic, and I'll explain why in a minute. But Arsenal coming away with the needed win, and a deserved win in my opinion. They took the 1-0 lead through a lovely finish from Aubameyang. Saka got on the ball, played a lovely ball with his left foot splitting the defence. Aubameyang went one-on-one with the keeper, got to it first, and dinked the goalkeeper. It was a typically fantastic finish from Aubameyang. Dani Ceballos gave away a free kick, which led to Benfica equalising with a superb effort from all of 25, if not 30 yards. It was a fantastic free kick right into the top corner. Goalkeeper really couldn't get near it. Had pace and accuracy. It was like a postage stamp. It was stuck right up there in the corner, and it was 1-1. It was 1-1 at half time. And Dani Ceballos made a bad mistake again early enough in the second half to allow Benfica into the lead. Meaning, because it was an away goal, that Arsenal needed 2 more goals. They would have to win 3-2 from that position to turn it around, which they eventually did, but it looked very bad when this goal went in. Ceballos, it was a high ball from the goalkeeper, dropping over his head. He thought he was just nonchalantly heading it back to his goalkeeper. He didn't see the run of Rafa, the Benfica winger, playing as more of an attacking midfielder in this game. But he ran through, said thank you very much, took it over the goalkeeper and slotted it in, and that was 2-1 to Arsenal, or to Benfica, with about half an hour to go. And it looked like Arsenal might be heading out of Europe. Benfica, they were playing with essentially a 3-4-3. They had their wing backs high and wide. Their wing backs are quite decent players. I like Grimaldo on the left. They had 3 centre backs familiar to Premier League watchers. Jan Vertonghen, formerly of Spurs, was that left centre back. Nicolas Otamendi, formerly of Manchester City, was the middle centre back. And then they had a young lad whose name I cannot remember at right centre back, and he was a bit at fault, that guy, for the next goal. Kieran Tierney receiving the ball about the corner of the box. He does well to shift it onto his left foot and blast it across into the far bottom corner. It was a great finish, but the centre back doesn't do well to block the shots. I talked about before how goalkeepers typically, they want the centre back, they can't block everything and the goalkeeper can't cover everything, so the goalkeeper wants them to be sure that they're blocking one side. Don't let anything through your legs, or don't bend your legs so they can put it past you. Block one side for definite and I'll cover the other side. And the player is blocking the far corner at first. Kieran Tierney disguises the shot to make it look like he's going more near post or central, which makes the defender try and lunge across instead of just leaving it to his goalkeeper. And Kieran Tierney then actually hits the shot back across the defender, who's now left a gap because he's made that small step to look for the block, and the ball is cut back across into the bottom corner. So it's very good technique from Tierney to disguise the shot and put it in the far bottom corner, laser accuracy. But I think the goalkeeper will be a bit disappointed with his centre back there for not just blocking off one side for sure and allowing the shot to come in at the other angle, which the goalkeeper would have been more comfortable saving. But it was a good goal from Tierney, and then that man Saka stepped up again to set up Aubameyang again. This time on the right hand side, he got 1v1 versus his defender, shifted it onto his left, curled the ball up and over the Benfica back line towards the back post. Aubameyang got up for the header to finish it off, and I think it was well deserved from Arsenal. They made the better chances. Benfica, I think, dominated the ball overall. I saw them hold a lot of possession, but for me they were doing a lot of huffing and puffing, as they say. They had a lot of, they threatened to create chances but never really penetrated a whole lot in behind the Arsenal back line, or even got it just in front of their back line. I think Arsenal defensively looked relatively comfortable for the most part. Besides conceding 2 goals, there were two mistakes, one free kick which was out of their control once it was given, and then the mistake from Ceballos to turn what was a relatively comfortable situation into a big chance for Rafa. But otherwise they restricted Benfica pretty well, and I think I created the better chances. All 3 of Arsenal's goals were created through good football from open play. So and that man Saka is really, he's become arguably Arsenal's most important attacking player. Yes, Aubameyang scores most of the goals. He scored 2 vital goals tonight, so you could argue the man who puts the ball in the back of the net is the man. But for me, they don't create near as many chances when Saka isn't on the pitch. He seems to be their chief creator, and he can do it in so many different ways. He has the vision and the creativity to pull off the passes, which he did for both Aubameyang's goals. He also has the pace to burst away from his defence on the counter-attack, or if he gets in a 1v1 situation. He's very dynamic. Saka is a very, very dynamic player. So he is integral. And Arsenal now move on to play Olympiacos, ironically. So they got to go back to that stadium again in Greece. 2 trips to Greece in a short space of time. They'll have to go back. It might be as early as next week. I can't remember when the first leg is, or maybe it's a week break, I think, next week. Yes, and then the games start after. I don't know if they're home or away first, Arsenal, but either way, within 2 to 3 weeks they'll be back in that same stadium in Athens, I think it's in, to play Olympiacos, who they've played it seems almost every year for the last decade. They meet them a lot, whether in the Champions League or the Europa League. I think Olympiacos knocked them out of the Europa League, if memory serves me right, last season. So bit of revenge on the cards for Arsenal. They should get past Olympiacos, but Olympiacos are a good team. Shouldn't be underestimated. So Arsenal play them in the next round, and will also be joined by their Premier League compatriots. I don't know. Manchester United getting through after a 0-0 draw with Real Sociedad, having won the first leg 4-0. Is a relatively comfortable affair for United. I think I talked about last time how Real Sociedad made the mistake of playing with a high line with not particularly fast defenders, and United have some of the fastest forwards in world football, and just said thank you very much and scored all 4 goals by essentially putting the ball through or over the Real Sociedad back line. They didn't want to commit that same fault this time around, so they think they sat a little bit deeper, therefore didn't have a whole lot going forward. They did win an early penalty, which for me was never a penalty. This is happening a lot now in football, where an attacker puts his leg across the defender and makes it look like the defender's run into the back of him and tripped him up from behind, when really he's the one initiating the contact. And it happens way too much, and referees look at it in replays and think, yeah, that's a foul, and it's something they have to address. It's happening way too much. It's the same as diving, it's only a bit more clever. They're initiating the contact first and then saying, oh, he ran into the back of me. And if you look at it in slow motion, again, it might look worse in slow motion than it does in real time. But if you see the attacker, just because the attacker gets in front of the player doesn't mean he's allowed to put his body across to then be run into. It doesn't work like that. For me, unless they've touched the ball, If they touch the ball first and that happens, fair enough. But unless they've touched the ball, it's not a foul. And really, it's a foul the other way around because they're putting their foot across the defensive player to create that contact. So, Axel Tuanzebe had his first ever goal for Manchester United ruled out because Lindelof decided to Muay Thai knee a Sociedad defender in the head, which looked very painful. Other than that, there was nothing really to speak of. United got Amad Diallo some more game time. I think he played about 20 minutes. Shola Shoretire played about 15 minutes. It's good to see them get some game time. Axel Tuanzebe played in midfield. Brandon Williams came on. Lots of players got rested, which was good. Ahead of Chelsea this Sunday, we're going to need everybody who is fit to be able to put in a shift for 90 minutes. So, good squad utilisation there from Ollie. United play AC Milan next in the Europa League, which is a classic European tie. So, very much looking forward to that. And yeah, that's about it. That covers the main talking points from Europe this week. A lot of big games this weekend. Like I said, United and Chelsea, Sevilla and Barcelona in La Liga, as well as Villarreal and Atletico Madrid. Another big game. Leicester play Arsenal on Sunday morning. Well, it's morning here. Be 12 noon, I think, local time. Leeds v Aston Villa, another game I'm very much looking forward to. So, a lot of big football this weekend. And I'll be back to review it all on Monday. So, thank you very much for listening. Really do appreciate it. If you want to leave a comment below and agree or disagree with anything I've said, please feel free and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, see you next time. Cheers.